Warning, listening to this show may result in increased levels of inspiration, motivation, and innovation. Side effects can include the immediate urge to take massive action to build a better business and life for yourself and others. You've been warned. Welcome to Influencers Radio with your host, Jack Mize.
And welcome to another episode of Influencers Radio. Today we're going to talk about something that you may hear all the time. You may think about all the time, but we probably don't think about it at a level that we should, or give it as much attention, or realize that we have as much control as we do over it. And that is happiness. You know, we hear the word happiness, we refer to people being happy, but to me, it seems to be that it's referred to as a feeling from the past or something to be looked forward to, but it's really rarely talked about as being experienced in the now. And, you know, maybe if you think about it, you may see it the same way. Well, today, my guest is an award-winning commercial filmmaker turned social entrepreneur. As a writer, producer, director, he was enjoying a promising creative career without actually enjoying it. And during 10 of his most productive years, he found them to also be 10 of his darkest, most unsatisfying years. And he felt directionless and that his life was missing purpose and meaning. And I run into so many successful people, or that appear to be successful, that this seems to be not an uncommon story. And so a big part of what we're going to be talking about today is, I guess, what I think about is the other side of success. It's not just about the achievements of finances and milestones. It really is about being happy with that success. And that's exactly what he does. He helps people all over the world who are successful but not satisfied by helping them make simple changes to their thought patterns so they can enjoy lasting happiness and a life of significance. He's the founder of Encourage.life, the creator of the Feed Your Happy app, and he's also the author of The 7 Core Skills of Everyday Happiness, Scientifically Proven Skills for a Happier, More Meaningful Life. Please welcome to Influencers Radio, Scott Wilhite. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hey, Jack. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be on your show with you today.
Well, you know, I started off at the top of the show kind of with my thought of happiness. And I think probably a lot of people have their own slant or variation of what happiness is. So for our purposes today, how do you define happiness?
Well, you know, that's a great question. And so many people look at it in so many different ways. It's interesting. Just a couple of weeks ago, the survey was revealed out in Australia, where Australians now look at success, what success means, and they equate that with happiness now rather than financial prosperity. You know, and for so many years, you know, I think, especially here in America, we think so much that success means, that is a monetary kind of thing. But, you know, kind of the way to look at happiness, what I was amazed to find was that happiness was a skill. It's more than a mood or a feeling. It's actually something that we can create, we can enjoy in our lives, and we can spark that ourselves. And there are a lot of myths to happiness, you know, such as, you know, I'll be happy when, you know, that myth that we tell ourselves, or that certain things will make us happy. You know, there's a lot of kind of misconceptions that we've been programmed through society and through years of negative training and different things that, you know, kind of keep happiness just always out of reach, just a carrot stick away. And that was something that I experienced until, you know, I had this amazing experience happen to me to just really refocus where I was looking for happiness.
You know, you talk about happiness, and I think a lot of people think it's a subjective term, you know, it means something different to everybody, but you talk about it as if there's like a quantitative attributes to this. And so what I want to point out early on, that what we're talking about today is really based in psychology, that we're not talking about the I'm okay, you're okay kind of pop self-help brand, that this is being seriously researched and taught in the psychology departments of top universities, right?
Yeah, positive psychology is it's a new branch within the field of psychology. It's led by top tier universities. Harvard's leading the way, Stanford, UCal Berkeley, the University of Pennsylvania. They all offer master's degree programs in this exciting new field that is all on the study of human flourishing. You know, how we could make the most and be the best of ourselves, and how these skills, how these traits are replicatable. You know, I mean, there are things that we could do in our lives. And with my story and how I stumbled into this is, well, I'm a commercial filmmaker. And years ago, I was out in Cambodia. I was filming with a film group, and it was my first day there. We were there filming a series of humanitarian films. And I remember being in this rickety old minivan, and we were just packed inside between boxes of gear and the rest of the film crew. And we had to have the windows down because the camera equipment was so sensitive that if we took it from a cold environment out into this extreme humidity, you know, it really messed it up. And so we had the windows down. I'm sweating. I'm drenched in sweat, and I'm complaining, of course, you know, because this is the way I thought back then. And I realize, you know, and then I'm thinking about, well, okay, my mission here, you know, they're sending me here to film the poor, destitute, sad people of Cambodia in order to instill in a rich American audience, you know, that they should open up their hearts and their wallets. You know, I mean, it was a good idea. But as I looked out the window, I saw these people that, you know, I saw a huge problem. I saw poor, destitute people, but I didn't see sad people. You know, I remember seeing this family of 5 all packed onto a single motorcycle making their way through town. And as I'm staring at them, you know, one of them could kind of sense that I was looking at him, and he looked over and his face just lit up, you know, and he had this joy. And that happened over and over again. Anyone who I would make eye contact with, their faces would light up with this pure joy. And I was kind of taken back. I was embarrassed. You know, I smiled back and kind of faked a smile, pretending that life was really as good for me as, you know, as it appeared on the outside. But I knew I was missing something. And so that's what started me on this quest to find happiness. And I did it all wrong. You know, I was sure that I was going to find it in the next big award, or the new job, or a nicer house, or a bigger car, you know, all these external things. And I searched and I searched. And the more I worked for it, the more out of reach it was, and the more frustrated I became. And anyway, it was absolutely terrible, because I was, you know, so obsessed over this thing that I couldn't get my fingers on. And that's when the most fortunate accident happened to me. And I was talking to a guy, and he had this little book under his arm, and he was so excited as he was talking about what he was reading. And he said he was reading about the science of happiness. And suddenly there was something inside of me that just leaped and said, that's what I want. That's what I need, is to understand the science behind this. And I ran to the bookstore, and as I started consuming all of this research on positive psychology, all of these studies that they've done to find out how to be, you know, more resilient, how to be happy, how to be truly successful in all aspects of your lives. That's when, that was the beginning of my transformation.
To find happiness in Cambodia, I think that's probably one of the biggest ironies that you can think of, because and I think it puts a spotlight on the fact that a lot of people think that poor, destitute automatically equals sadness. And I think a lot of people, at least when they first think about it, they think prosperity or riches or finances equals happiness. But I don't think anyone could debate that there are a lot of very unhappy, wealthy people.
Oh, you bet.
In the world. And I think that's probably a good place to start, to separate, the two, that prosperity doesn't equal happiness, but, not having a lot of prosperity or finances does not equal, sadness, right? And so it really is about fulfillment, I guess, a fulfilling life. And you talk about in the book, in your book, the 7 core skills of everyday happiness. One of the chapters is actually about a road to more fulfilling life. So it's not, if it's not prosperity, if it's not finances, what do we find on that road to a more fulfilling life?
Purpose. Those that live for a life of significance, I mean, that totally changes their outlook. That changes their focus on what they're going after. And really, that's what the 7 core skills of everyday happiness is all about. It's about reframing how we're looking for happiness, how we, and how we approach them. I mean, if you think about it, you talk about how you can be wealthy and completely unhappy. You can be poor and completely unhappy, and we all know people on all, ranges of the spectrum who are extremely happy or extremely sad. And it doesn't matter so much their external circumstances as much as it matters about their mindset. I mean, think about it. Can you be super skinny and still feel like you're the fattest person in the room? Yeah. I mean, it's called anorexia. Can you be in a crowd of people and feel completely alone? That you're there, you feel lonely. Absolutely. Can you be at Disneyland and have the worst time of your life? Of course. It's all about what we focus on. It's about the stories we tell ourselves, So, if you're in a job that's less satisfying, if you're struggling in your relationship, you're drifting apart, you're feeling loneliness and sadness there. If you feel like you're stuck or trapped, or you feel like you're giving up, don't give up hope. The cool thing about all this research is that there are things that you can do to deliberately reframe, to refocus on what you've been obsessing about, the stories that you've been telling yourself and how you've been approaching life. And they are so simple. They are so easy that, they're deceptively simple, really. That as you start to look at these skills, and you may dismiss them at first, because that's what I did when I first really started getting into it. I thought that it can't really work. It can't be that easy. That can't really make that big of a difference. And so for me, when I first heard about the research and heard about these skills, I didn't do it. I didn't do any of the interventions that they talk about, because really it's about reprogramming your mindset. It's about conditioning your thought process, your thought patterns to think more healthy thoughts. And when I first heard about it, I put it aside and didn't really believe it. But after like 2 or 3 weeks, I was so frustrated that I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it out. And one of the simple interventions that they talk about is to keep a gratitude journal. And I thought, that sounds fluffy. That sounds like unicorns and rainbows. I'm not going to keep a gratitude journal. But after those 3 weeks of frustration, I said, I'm going to try it. And so the activity that you do is to every day write down 3 fortunate things that happened to you that day. And it's a very simple thing. And so when I started doing it, I did it for a week and really nothing happened. But I committed myself that I was really going to try this out, for a number of weeks. And my system was that every night before I went to sleep, I pulled out my gratitude journal and I was going to write, these 3 fortunate things that happened that day. I'd reflect back on the day. Well, finally, about a week later, I was really tired and I wanted to go to sleep and I couldn't think of 3 fortunate things. And so it really kind of ticked me off. So the next day, I said, okay, I'm not going to have that happen again. And so I'm going to look, I'm going to find these early. And so I start paying attention. And, for me, I remember that first one was I was driving through the canyon. I live up in the mountains. I was driving through the canyon and this guy pulled over so I could pass him. He was going much slower. And I thought, that's what I'm going to write about today. And I felt like these great feelings of happiness inside. And I realized that it makes a difference when you start looking for it. And through, that week, I started to condition myself to look for and expect fortunate things to happen. So rather than obsessing over all the problems that I felt were going on in my life, I started to then notice the beauty and the wonderful things and to really start, changing my focus. And it wasn't deluding myself or anything like that. It was about becoming more alive, more awake, more aware, more conscious. And as I started to do that, that's when, I really started to feel, these incredible feelings of gratitude and happiness and hope and, this connectiveness to, the good things in life. So that was the beginning of my transformation. Does that kind of make sense to you?
It does. And I think it takes it above. And I know you say it's simple, but I think when people, when I think about simple I think about the song, don't worry, be happy. And a lot of people think, well, just be happy. And just is a big word. It's often used that kind of sweeps a lot of stuff under the rug. But one of the things is that you say there's skills. And I think you just demonstrated how you, it wasn't something that just happened by you deciding to be happy, that you made a purposeful effort in what you were doing. And I think the science behind this and just the term skill implies that it's something that can be developed, right? Rather than something that is just, I'm going to decide to do today. And I think, that story you just told is a powerful demonstration of, one, gratitude. I think that's something that so many people miss. And when I read about that part in your book, because the way you phrase things, it really jumped out at me because you used the word fair, in the book, and fairness. And that's been a big word in my household with two teenage boys is one of the things that's not allowed to be said in my house is that's unfair or that's not fair. And I always say, well, life's not fair, but you better be thankful for that. Because you're a lot better off. You have a lot more stuff. If life was fair, you'd have a lot less than you have now right now. It's
really about being deliberate and intentional on our mindsets, on what we think about. One of the things, this was the concept that first it hit me like a 2x4 in the face. When I first heard about this, I was reading one of the studies about happiness, and one of the about gratitude actually. And one of the researchers made this comment. He said, you can't be truly grateful and unhappy at the same time. And that just hit me. I thought, oh my goodness, that means there's something I can do about it. If I can be actively actively grateful, if I can find things for which I'm actively grateful, it pushes out the negative side. And so I can choose what I focus on. And anyway, I'll tell you a quick story where I kind of applied this in my life. One time I was leaving. I live up in the mountains, up above Sundance, and I had this important meeting. It was my first meeting with this lady. She has a really big company, and this was going to be a huge sale. I was really excited about it. Hadn't met her before. So this is first impressions and everything. And as I'm leaving my town, and it's like a 50-minute drive, and I'm kind of out in the middle of, nowhere in between the drive. As I'm leaving town, I look and I see this little warning light on my car, and it's my tire pressure warning light. And I kind of freak out, and I pull over to the side of the road, and I hop out and look around at all the tires. And sure enough, on the driver's side front tire, there is this silver screw head sticking out. I hop back in my car and I just start losing it, because that's the way that I had been trained, is just that bad things happen and you react, and then I took a minute and composed myself, and I thought, wait a second, what have I learned from all of this stuff, from these skills? And so I took a minute to really take an assessment, and I took a few deep breaths, and then I thought about it a little bit more, and I realized what an amazing, fortunate thing had just happened to me. Because that little light in my car, it didn't tell me that I had a flat tire. It told me I was going to have a flat tire. And that is a totally different story now. Suddenly, I put this action plan into place. I called my daughter. I had her meet me at the tire store. We switched cars. I was able to then, get on the road and, without losing much time at all. I called the lady that I was going to meet with. I told her the story about what just happened. We were able to have a great conversation. I told her I'd be a few minutes late, but and as I'm driving down, I am feeling these intense feelings of gratitude. Again, this is being deliberate. This is being intentional on what I'm focused on, because I'm looking at the fact that I am so fortunate to own a car that will tell me I'm going to have a flat tire. And I didn't get stuck out in the middle of nowhere, and I didn't ruin my rim, and I didn't ruin the tire, and I didn't lose all that much time, and I didn't come into the meeting frustrated and angry. I was coming in, from a sense of gratitude and appreciation. And what a great first impression that was. But that happened because, I learned these skills and I started applying them in my life. And so they became a little bit more natural to, when things started to spiral out of control, I was able to catch it. Does that make sense to you? How you can, as you learn these skills, there are things that you could do when life starts to unravel that you can catch it and be more conscious and aware of all the good things going on. And when you focus on that, that's where the change happens. That's where you start to feel those great feelings of happiness.
That actually leads into something that I wanted to talk to you about, is the fact that I guess happiness, the way it's kind of redefined to me, especially after reading your book, is it's really is something that's experienced rather than a situation. And I think where that's really illustrated is in your, when you talk about the myths of happiness.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I think the first myth, if I'm not mistaken, was that happiness is found in things. And I think that's probably one of the big myths that people fall into.
We have been conditioned. We've been trained by society and all these things to believe these things. And even though on the surface, some of them, we know that they're not true. Like we know money doesn't buy happiness. We know that. But yeah, okay, we're still going to try, and there's amazing science. There's amazing research that they've done that, like, for instance, this is a dumb question to ask, but would you rather win the lottery or would you rather be in a paralyzing accident? Of course we think, well, I'd rather win the lottery, but they've done research on people who have gone through paralyzing, tragic accidents, and those who have won the lottery. And then those of us who, kind of nothing has changed. And what they found is that the people who win the lottery, their levels of life satisfaction go down, and their relationships suffer and all these other negative things that we wouldn't really think about, and we hear that stuff and we read we know the philosophies that money doesn't buy happiness, but yeah, I still want to try. Maybe it'll make me happy. But if we can refocus that and understand that that's a myth, that looking for happiness outside of ourselves, looking for it in awards. I mean, I won a whole bunch of awards and it was so unsatisfying. And I mean, just think about, anyone listening, think about your life. Think about all the success that you've had, all the great things that you've done. Was it as satisfying as you thought? A lot of times, no, because, we get to that plateau, we get to that award, that destination, that thing that's outside that we thought this will make me happy. And we realize it didn't, it didn't satisfy me in the way that I want. And so immediately we're on to the next thing or the next, hoping that would somehow bring that lasting happiness. So that's one of the myths of happiness is that happiness is found in things. Another one, I think I may have mentioned is that when we say the words, I'll be happy when, that's a terrible self-destructing myth that we tell ourselves. We're self-sabotaging our own happiness when we do that, because what we're saying to ourselves is, I'm not happy now, and I mean, it can be as simple as, a woman saying, oh, I'll be happy when I start dating. And then, later it's, I'll be happy when we get married. And then it's like, oh, I'll be happy when we have kids. And then, oh, I'll be happy when these kids are out of diapers. And I'll be happy when the kids go to school and I have time to myself. And I'll be happy when the kids move out. And, we keep telling ourselves these things and we never stop to actually be happy now, because of these stories, because of the conditioning that we're putting on ourselves, and we miss it, and really, so, understanding some of these myths, understanding where we have been self-sabotaging ourselves, that's when we can start to catch ourselves and to put things into place so that, we can live more intentionally, more deliberately with our thought patterns.
I have a question around the I'll be happy when, because that's always the one that's jumped out at me. I talked about at the top of the show that happiness is either something that we remember being happy or we look forward to being happy. Right? Uh-huh. It's rarely experienced in the now. So my question to you is, what's the opposite of happiness? Because to me, it's not necessarily sadness. The person that's saying, I'll be happy when, probably wouldn't characterize themselves as being unhappy necessarily in that moment. But to me, it's they're enduring life in that moment, waiting to enjoy life. So what would you classify that as the opposite of happiness? Because I don't think it's sadness.
Oh, I don't think it's sadness either. In fact, mourning and grieving is actually a part of happiness. And you'll find that in my book, that taking time to mourn with others and to grieve with others, you have that connection with people. And if you use that correctly as a skill, it can bring great feelings of happiness to you. But no, I would say that I don't know if it's the opposite, but definitely counter to happiness is being asleep, is being unconscious, unaware. And we live most of our lives like that so often. We just kind of get conditioned into that. There's a great quote by Junia Britus, who said, "If you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present." So, learning to apply some of these skills, to be mindful, to be fully present, to be aware, to be conscious, to be awake, these things, that's when life starts to open up for you. But the opposite is the way that we've been conditioned, is to just go through life on autopilot, where things are just happening to us and we're just reacting and we're not living. And so, that's kind of what I would say would be the opposite.
That quote that you just said, really powerful. And, you talked about being grateful, but that also, as far as the 7 skills, I think that brings up the skill of savor the now, what you just talked about.
Yes.
So,
totally.
And that is a skill, because obviously a lot of people miss that, neglect it, ignore it, or I'm not sure what you would call it. What's the trick? What's the secret for savoring the now?
There are a lot of strategies that you can put in place to recognize things. And one of the simplest things is to just stop. To stop and to start to recognize things around. The things that you will find in the book, and I'm also the creator of the Feed Your Happy app. That started because, when I learned about all these skills of positive psychology, I found out happiness was a skill, actually, a set of skills. But I found out they were skills that I wasn't good at. And so I felt like I needed to have some sort of system to condition myself. And I started carrying cards. It was kind of a filmmaker technique that I would do, where I would have activities for myself that I would do during the day to condition myself. Well, the app kind of turned into that. And so if you get this, if you're an iPhone user, you can download it at the iTunes store. But what it does is it gives you activities so that you can be deliberate. You can stop during the day and focus on something. You can focus on, the people who are your greatest friends. Who could you call in the middle of the night to bail you out of jail or something like that? Who would be your true friends? You could stop and you can, start to appreciate the smells around, the sights around, a lot of those, little tiny activities and techniques that you can do to be more conscious and aware and understanding of how good life really is for you. And you miss it when you're moving so fast, and we're conditioned that way. So you kind of have to put deliberate roadblocks in your way so that you can stop and you can appreciate these things. But those are just a few techniques that you can use to savor the now. The main thing is to first understand it, to get that good understanding of where you have been, kind of self-sabotaging your happiness, where your thought patterns have not been as constructive as you would like them to be. And as you start to understand those, then you can start to figure out, okay, which of these systems can I put in place so that I can condition myself to be more awake and aware? And you'll find a bunch of those in the book or on the app, or there's a lot of interventions you can do. The main thing is to first learn about it. First, get that education. Yeah,
because I think everybody's familiar with the saying, you got to stop and smell the roses, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not exactly easy to do or remember. And I guess just the same way that someone if happiness is a skill, in the same way that I guess being healthy or exercising or eating right is a skill, and lots of people use tools to help them develop those skills. And I guess your happiness app, I guess, would be considered a tool to help you develop this skill. do you consider happiness to be a habit? Something that's a habit that can be developed, that at some point it just becomes part of who you are, the same way that people that, eat right or develop other habits. You see it as being a habit?
It absolutely can be. For me, I'm a recovering grumpaholic. I have been trained all my life to think negatively. One of the things that, being a film producer is you're always focused on the problem. It's kind of like a lawyer who is always looking for loopholes. A producer is always, trying to solve problems. So I've just been conditioned to think negatively all the time. So these mindset tools that we talk about, the app, the book, the course that I have, these are things that I created for myself because I have to work on this all the time. I have to condition myself to get out of the mindset that I have been in all my life. And so, is it a habit? Can it be a habit? Absolutely. If a guy like me can change my life, surely, other people can do it much easier. And we look at optimists a lot of times and we think, oh man, they have it so easy. Look at them, even when life goes bad for them, they smile and they find, something good in it. They find the lesson in it, and just all the problems seem to just kind of roll off their shoulders and it doesn't seem to faze them. But what we don't realize is there are people who, of course, are naturally optimistic, but you can train yourself to have those thought patterns. And I consider them healthy thought patterns. It's not a matter of right and wrong. Did you think right? Did you think wrong? No, it's a matter of healthy versus unhealthy. Is this is believing this certain way, these limiting belief stories that you may tell yourself or obsessing over things that are outside of your control. Are these going to be healthy for you in the long run? Or can you change it to focus on something else? And will those thought patterns be more healthy? And what really ends up happening when people start looking at them as skills and start applying things in their lives is these habits then start to turn into a lifestyle. And that lifestyle is the lifestyle of the optimist. And that's what, I think ultimately we all want, because then it becomes more natural, more easy, and certainly more fulfilling in our lives.
And I guess, especially since you came from, I guess a self-admitted grumpaholic. I think either, we all know a grumpaholic or maybe even see that in ourselves. So it's not like you wake up every morning and say, okay, time to be happy, damn it. To get in that thing, but it's over time you've kind of developed to where it becomes second nature, right? Yeah,
it's becoming much better. The thing that I'm doing, an exercise that I'm doing right now that I am so excited about is I have a morning routine now, and I have been meditating on compassion. And I am amazed at how this has changed me. I've been using these skills for a long time, and I rotate them around so that I keep them fresh and everything. But meditating about compassion, thinking about somebody who's bothering me, and then thinking compassionate thoughts to them. Oh man, it's so weird, but it changes something inside of me to where I'm more understanding of them and their circumstances, and I see kind of some of their weaknesses with a little bit more of a human eye. And it's really about, kind of repetitive conditioning, putting these systems into place and different things so that, that when we're faced with the challenges, just kind of natural reactions, then we can be more deliberate. We're not reactive as much as we are active.
Yeah, and you use that word deliberate, and that's what I'm thinking when you say you practice this daily. So it's definitely something that you need to be purposeful about. Mm-hmm. Again, it's not just, just decide to be happy and you're going to be happy. I know one of the skills you talk about in your book is improve daily.
It's interesting. A lot of times we think that happiness comes in the end, and again, one of those happiness myths, I'll be happy when, and we look at these goals and these things that we set for ourselves, and they're so far away and they're so lofty, but really happiness comes in the striving. Because when we've achieved those great things, you graduate from university and you think it's going to be this great thing. And it's like, oh, okay, well, now I get a job, and it's not as fulfilling as we think it is. But a lot of times we just kind of get lulled to sleep and we stop developing, we stop progressing. And there's so much joy that comes when you're stretching, when you're growing, when you're doing new things. And so what we talk about in this book is in the improved daily part is about adding a bit of friction in your life so that there's a little bit of stuff. It's really about optimal stress. And you may know about some of those studies that they've done. You think about like athletes.
Good stress, I guess.
Good stress, yeah. It's the stuff that makes you go higher. It's the stuff that challenges you. You get too much stress and you start to shut down. But if you have optimal stress, then you're going as hard and as fast and as high as you can. And when you get those kinds of things, but that doesn't just happen naturally. If I went and asked you, okay, how high, how high can you jump? Jump to your highest. You'll jump however high you go. But then if I put a little mark there and say, okay, jump higher than this, you're probably going to jump higher, or if somebody that you're competing against, anyway, I mean, that's just kind of a little example, but the more that we kind of measure ourselves and push and stretch, that's when we start to grow. And that's when we start to feel different feelings of exhilaration and self-confidence and self-awareness that happen from stretching and growing and doing things that, a lot of times we didn't think we could do. This whole journey for me has been rather amazing. I have told myself all these limiting beliefs. I can't do this. I can't be a public speaker. I can't be a business guy. I can't, and all of these things, it turns out, are fake stories that I've told myself. But as I've, been working on it, I have been improving in all these different ways, and I find the shackles come off of me, and I can do all these amazing things now that I never would have thought was possible because of my limiting mindset that I had before. But it doesn't come without challenge. I would never be here right now without being challenged. So the idea with Improve Daily is to put things, specifically in your way to challenge you, to get you to stretch and to grow and to feel those feelings of exhilaration by becoming more of what you're able to do. More of your possibilities.
I talked about earlier on in our conversation about how there's the science behind this, right? And I think what you've done is probably taken that science and you've put together some disciplines based on the principles of that science. And again, I want to, at least my belief, that because of the, what was it, Pennsylvania? What were the schools that are?
The University of Pennsylvania is doing some really great stuff. Martin Seligman is there. He's kind of the father of positive psychology. Harvard is really leading the charge. They started a course on happiness, and it quickly became the most popular class on campus. And you think about, well, wait, these are all super successful, amazing students to be able to go to Harvard. Why would they be searching for happiness? And you realize, that we all want it. Success means something a little bit different. And a lot of times stress and anxiety and worry, kind of defeats our happiness. But so Harvard, Stanford, University of Cal, at Berkeley, they are doing great stuff. There's so many different ones, and they. Anyway, the research is awesome. All the studies that they've been doing and the things that they have found that just kind of supports these core skills.
That's the one thing that I really want to point out. What you're doing is you're not telling people it's as simple as just thinking, about it. That you let them know that it takes effort, it takes commitment to do this. And to me, that really is tremendous. But the other thing about your book is that it's not really overly clinical. I mean, it is really entertaining to read. And I've got to point out, little things strike me, but it was the very first paragraph of chapter 1 when you're talking about, and I'll just quote from the book where it says, "It took mere seconds for me to give up hope. We were caught in the churn of the waves and the unrelenting pull of the rip current. I've never felt so powerless so quickly. 3 of us are going to die, I determined. This will surely put a damper on the family vacation." that had me hooked. That last line, this will surely put a damper on the family vacation. I thought, okay, when's the movie coming out? I'm going to enjoy this. What is it? Is your happiness or that allows you to interject that? Because I mean, that hooked me. I knew that I was going to read this book all the way through because of that type of mindset or that type of personality.
Thank you for liking that. I sure appreciate that you enjoy my writing style. What I love is I love stories. I'm a commercial filmmaker. For me, it's all about stories, and stories I feel give us the framework for living. We watch these movies or we read these books and things, and we hear these stories, and we kind of learn how to make choices in our lives, and it also helps us to remember things. And so throughout the book, I mean, I grab all this great research that's out there, but then I take it and I find the concepts and I will wrap a story around them, so it becomes kind of a mental trigger. So that when you're out and about and you get into a situation, you can remember this story and go, oh, hey, if I respond this way, it's going to work out much better for me. But it all starts with a story, because those are the things we remember. You can go through to classes and all sorts of stuff and get information, and it'll all be gone. But what you'll retain are the stories. And so if we can wrap the concepts and the ideas and the principles around a story, people will remember it a lot better. People will remember my story about the fortunate flat tire a lot better than any of this, the studies that I can tell, on the podcast. But by doing that, I feel like it helps people more than, kind of the standard way of presenting information.
Well, it certainly does. And I think that's really, why I think of you as an influencer, and why this stands out and is going to help so many people. I think people will read this and instantly recognize, oh my, this guy's in my head. He understands. He understands me. Now, Scott, I consider myself an optimist, but I'm also a realist. So I have to ask the question that I know is on the minds of, a certain group of folks that are going to be out there, that, Scott, this is all great and the skills and working and developing this happiness, but they make a pill for that.
That's
what
so
do you
true.
say to that?
Oh, I always kind of think it's funny, the people that call themselves realists and that kind of seems to be I don't know, kind of an escape, for not being willing to believe different things like this. And I absolutely understand it's going to be about your mindset. It's going to be about what you focus on, what you believe. But really, as I've experienced these things, and I was there with you. I mean, when I first read about this science, I wanted it. I wanted to believe it. But inside of me, it said, there's no way that can possibly be true. There's no way that a simple gratitude journal is going to make any sort of difference in my life. And so I didn't do it. I didn't apply it. And nothing happened. Nothing changed. But when I started applying these things, that's when it really started to happen. But what happened was I became more awake, more aware, more conscious. And realism or not, if you can be more conscious, if you can be more aware of all the different sides, there's not just one side to a coin. If you can be aware of all these other things, then you suddenly are empowered with the opportunity to choose. I was always frustrated when people would say happiness is a choice or something like that. I know that Abraham Lincoln is famous for saying people are about as happy as they make up their mind to be. And that frustrated me because, for those 10 years of darkness, when after the Cambodia trip and I was searching for happiness, I was doing everything I could, and it was making me more miserable and more frustrated and more angry. And it wasn't until I woke up. It wasn't until I learned about these things to look within and then to control the different emotions and feelings that I had by deliberately being grateful, by, intentionally creating a sense of awe, putting myself into situations where I felt awe, where I felt something new and something exciting, where I started to live with a purpose and find that in my life, and to deliberately, intentionally put these things in. That's when life really opened up for me. And it wasn't about I mean, to me, that's real. That's being a realist is understanding all the aspects of life and not just focusing on, what you can see or what seems apparent, but having a much wider belief structure.
Well, one thing that I think is really powerful about the book, it makes it such a great tool even in itself, is that it's not just you saying, here you should be happy, you should be grateful, and the stories are wonderful, but you also have activities in there that are, very almost directions on here's what you can do to apply this. Mm-hmm. Right. So what should someone expect if they go through the 7 skills and then they apply and actually work through these activities?
You're going to feel something. You're going to start to realize that what you focus on matters. And you're also going to find out how simple it is to spiral up, to spark happiness within you. And it's so simple, but it's so simple, we generally don't do it. Common sense is not always common practice. Like one of the activities, I'll tell you one that I love, it's one of my favorite ones, is the activity to go and give a chocolate bar to somebody. And, you think of that, oh, that's so simple. But then what happens is you have like this premeditated part where you're going to the store, unless you already have a candy bar around, you're going to the store and you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to do this for somebody else. So there's this premeditation. And then when you're actually giving it to someone, you kind of have this excitement. Who am I going to give it to? What am I going to say? How am I going to present this? And then in all the activities, we practice what's called practical mindfulness, where we have people journal it. They write just 2 or 3 sentences about what they just experienced. And so they kind of relive that. And through this journaling experience, they are able to kind of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the premeditated feelings, the actual activity, and then the post, remembering and reflecting and savoring, what they just felt. All of a sudden you start to feel something. And that's so simple and it's so easy. And you're not going to do it, just accidentally. These happen when you put these things into your path, when you decide, okay, what am I going to do today to spark my happiness? What am I going to do today to feed my happiness? And when you do that, then you live a much more empowered, much more exciting life.
How can folks find out more about Scott Wilhite, find out about the book, and about the other things that you're doing, because you're doing a lot of things in this field right now?
When I found out happiness was a skill or a set of skills, I found out it was, skills I wasn't good at. And so I needed tools. I needed some sort of system that would help me condition myself to live the life that I really wanted, but that was, not natural for me, not easy. So the best way to find out, to connect with me is to go to encourage.life. It's the letter N, the word courage.life. It's kind of a different URL ending name, a domain name. But that's really what we're about. We're about encouraging life and getting the most out of life. And so you will find tools there. I have different courses that you can take, different freebies too. We have some films, wonderful films that will help inspire you. You can link to the app there, Feed Your Happy. And of course, my brand new book, The 7 Core Skills of Everyday Happiness, scientifically proven skills for a happier, more meaningful life. I hope you'll check it out. I hope you go to Amazon and download it. It'll be there. December 6th. I don't know when you'll hear this podcast, but December 6th it launches, and it's gonna be fantastic.
Yeah, well, I would encourage anyone to grab this because, like I said, it's such I hate to say an easy read, but it is an easy read. It's an entertaining read, because you do have you really are gifted in the way you tell your stories, but also I don't think you can help but improve yourself through reading this. Even if you don't try, if you go through it, there are going to be things that you're going to have so many, I guess what I call V8 moments. And I'm going to give away a little bit of the ending here, because I think it makes a very important point of how this all wraps up is in the activity where you talk about writing your own obituary. And I think a great analogy of that is that you used was with Ebenezer Scrooge. that was pretty much the whole basis of that story was him facing, his mortality and looking back at his life. And I think, you kind of put that together by writing that obituary as you get to tell that story with you as the main character, in your mind. And I think a lot of people may be surprised, at what they see and some things that they need to change. And I think that is at that point in the book, I think that's when everything that you've just read, hits you, so hard, and you realize how meaningful, this book is. So I really would encourage anyone to check this out, because it is a very good book, on the topic and the real science of positive psychology, science of happiness. So, Scott, I want to thank you for coming on the show today and sharing this information. I think it's going to make a huge difference in a lot of people's lives. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jack. I sure have appreciated being on your show and talking to you. Thank you.
Well, there it is, folks. Check it out. The 7 core skills of everyday happiness, scientifically proven skills for a happier, more meaningful life. And definitely check out encourage.life, URL, just the letter N, courage.life. We'll have links to that on the show post, and I look forward to and anticipate some big things coming out from Scott Wilhite, and we'll definitely be following you to see how all this unfolds. So definitely look forward to it.
Thank you so much.
Until next time on Influencers Radio, remember, you are the only game changer.
You've been listening to Influencers Radio. To get all past shows and updates on future shows, visit influencersradio.com today or follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/influencersradio.